requires a series of needling operations and finally an operation on the muscle of my eye. The eye is still in my head, so much for that. Well, the gauze mask served a purpose. While I was resting in the hospital, the friends whom I had neglected or affronted in one way or another began to call on me, and now that I was in pain and darkness, their voices seemed to have changed. Or rather, that unpleasant mutation which I had suspected earlier in the season had now disappeared, and they sounded now as they had used to in the lamented days of my obscurity. Once more, they were sincere and kindly voices with the ring of truth in them, and that quality of understanding for which I had originally sought them out. As far as my physical vision was concerned, this last operation was only relatively successful, although it left me with an apparently clear black pupil in the right position, or nearly so. But in another figurative way, it had served a much deeper purpose. When the gauze mask was removed, I found myself in a readjusted world. I checked out of the handsome suite at the first-class hotel, packed my papers and a few incidental belongings, and left for Mexico, an elemental country where you can quickly forget the false dignities and conceits imposed by success, a country where vagrants innocent as children curl up to sleep on the pavements, and human voices, especially when their language is not familiar to the ear, are soft as birds. My public self, that artifice of mirrors, did not exist here, and so my natural being was resumed. Then, as a final act of restoration, I settled for a while at Chapala to work on a play called The Poker Night, which later became A Streetcar Named Desire. It is only in his work that an artist can find reality and satisfaction, for the actual world is less intense than the world of his invention, and consequently his life, without recourse to violent disorder, does not seem very substantial. The right condition for him is that in which his work is not only convenient but unavoidable. For me, a convenient place to work is a remote place among strangers where there is good swimming, but life should require a certain minimal effort. You should not have too many people waiting on you. You should have to do most things for yourself. Hotel service is embarrassing. Maids, waiters, bellhops, porters, and so forth are the most embarrassing people in the world, for they continually remind you of inequities which we accept as the proper thing. The sight of an ancient woman, gasping and wheezing as she drags a heavy pail of water down a hotel corridor to mop up the mess of some drunken, overprivileged guest, is one that sickens and weighs upon the heart and withers it with shame for this world in which it is not only tolerated, but regarded as proof positive that the wheels of democracy are functioning as they should, without interference from above or below. Nobody should have to clean up anybody else's mess in this world. It is terribly bad for both parties, but probably worse for the one receiving the service. I have been corrupted as much as anyone else by the vast number of menial services which our society has grown to expect and depend on. We should do for ourselves, or let the machines do for us, the glorious technology that is supposed to be the new light of the world. We are like a man who has bought a great amount of equipment for a camping trip, who has the canoe and the tent and the fishing lines and the axe and the guns, the mackinaw and the blankets, but who now, when all the preparations and the provisions are piled expertly together, is suddenly too timid to set out on the journey, but remains where he was yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that, looking suspiciously through white lace curtains at the clear sky he distrusts. Our great technology is a God-given chance for adventure and for progress which we are afraid to attempt. Our ideas and our ideals remain exactly what they were and where they were 3 centuries ago. No, I beg your pardon. It is no longer safe for a man even to declare them. This is a long excursion from a small theme into a large one, which I did not intend to make. So let me go back to what I was saying before. This is an oversimplification. One does not escape that easily from the seduction of an effete way of life. You cannot arbitrarily say to yourself, I will now continue my life as it was before this thing, success, happened to me. But once you fully apprehend the vacuity of a life without struggle, you are equipped with the basic means of salvation. Once you know this is true, that the heart of man, his body, and his brain are forged in a white-hot furnace for the purpose of conflict, the struggle of creation, and that with the conflict removed, that the man is a sword cutting daisies, that not privation but luxury is the wolf at the door, and that the fangs of the wolf are all the little vanities and conceits and laxities that success is heir to. Why, then with this knowledge, you are at least in a position of knowing where the danger lies. You know, then, that the public somebody you are when you have a name is a fiction created with mirrors, and that the only somebody worth being is the solitary and unseen you that existed from your first breath, and which is the sum of your actions, and so is constantly in a state of becoming under your own violations. And knowing these things, you can even survive the catastrophe of success. It is never altogether too late, unless you embrace the bitch goddess, as William James called her, with both arms, and find in her smothering caresses exactly what the homesick little boy in you always wanted, absolute protection and utter effortlessness. Security is a kind of death, I think, and it can come to you in the storm of royalty checks beside a kidney-shaped pool in Beverly Hills, or anywhere at all that is removed from the conditions that made you an artist, if that's what you were or intended to be. Ask anyone who has experienced the kind of success I am talking about. What good is it? Perhaps to get an honest answer, you will have to give him a shot of truth serum, but the word he will finally groan is unprintable in genteel publications. Then what is good? The obsessive interest in human affairs, plus a certain amount of compassion and moral conviction, that first made the experience of living something that must be translated into pigment, or music, or bodily movement, or poetry, or prose, or anything that's dynamic and expressive. That's what's good for you if you're at all serious in your aims. William Saroyan wrote a great play on this theme, that purity of heart is the one success worth having. In the time of your life, live. That time is short, and it doesn't return again. It is slipping away while I write this and while you read it, and the monosyllable of the clock is lost, 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 unless you devote your heart to its oppression. What? Opposition, whatever. Sorry. Okay, skipping that part.
Okay. The characters. Amanda Wingfield, the mother. A little woman of great but confused vitality, clinging frantically to another time and place. Her characterization must be carefully created, not copied from type. She is not paranoid, but her life is paranoia. There is much to admire in Amanda, and as much to love and pity as there is to laugh at. Certainly she has endurance and a kind of heroism, and though her foolishness make her unwittingly cruel at times, there is tenderness in her slight person. Laura Wingfield, her daughter. Amanda had failed to establish contact with reality, continued to live vitally in her illusions, but Laura's situation is even graver. A childhood illness has left her crippled, one leg slightly shorter than the other, and held in a brace. This defect may not be more than suggested on the stage. Stemming from this, Laura's separation increases, till she is like a piece of her own glass collection, too exquisitely fragile to move from the shop. Tom Wingfield, her son and a narrator of the play. A poet with a job in a warehouse. His nature is not remorseless, but to escape from the trap, he has to act without pity. Jim O'Connor, the gentleman caller, a nice, ordinary young man.
Production notes. Being a memory play, the Glass Menagerie can be presented with unusual freedom of convention. Because of its considerably delicate or tenuous material, atmospheric touches and subtleties of direction play a particularly important part. Expressionism and all other conventional techniques in drama have only one valid aim, and that is a closer approach to truth. When a play employs unconventional techniques, it is not, or certainly shouldn't be, trying to escape its responsibility of dealing with reality or interpreting experience, but it is actually, or should be, attempting to find a closer approach, a more penetrating and vivid expression of things as they are. The straight realistic play with its genuine frigid air and authentic ice cubes, its characters who speak exactly as its audience speaks, corresponds to the academic landscape and has the same virtue of photographic likeness. Everyone should know nowadays the unimportance of the photographic in art, that truth, life, or reality is an organic thing which the poetic imagination can represent or suggest, in essence, only through transformation, through changing into other forms than those which were merely present in appearance. These remarks are not meant as a preface only to this particular play. They have to do with a conception of a new plastic theater which must take the place of